Well, the old cat is out of the old bag. But why is it playing with new toys? Also, why is it the new cat?
Literally everyone in this queue is a new VGU version of the old champion!
Yup, League Classic has officially been fully revealed, and after some trouble getting it onto the PBE, we can now see Classic for what it truly is. A mockery of the real thing. Though to be honest, there are also some cool changes, but there is one specific change that we definitely have to talk about. So this time we actually got 3 different sources for the Classic news. There is the dev update video, there is the dev blog, and there is the fact that it is now on PBE. Which means the info we got is actually quite complete. So the dev update started in a hilarious way. In a completely empty office. That's because it's the summer and half of the writers were on a break. Anyway, right at the beginning they confirmed that Season 3 of League of Legends will be split into 2 halves with 2 slightly different themes. With the first half focusing on Classic, and the second half being all about the fact that Riot Games are a music company. Which this is what everyone expected. By the end of the year, either KDA is coming back or there is a new band. Then Meddler confirmed that around Worlds we will learn more about what's their plan for 2027. This is likely gonna be talking about the big update with the new League client and stuff like that. But of course, before we get into the future, we go into the past. For the Classic stuff. So they confirmed that Classic is all about bringing back the nostalgic memories. They also mention how it's all about bringing down the EU West servers. Which is a lie. Before there was EU West, there was one unified European server where the minimum queue was 45 minutes. Don't you forget that. But we truly get back to the nostalgic memories when they throw us back to Freak and Feral Pony. Now this is awesome. Because Freak is of course one of the OGs. We are literally talking about one of the highest rated players in League's original beta. And Feral Pony, one of the original designers on League of Legends, who now has the title of Game Director of League Classic, which is a completely separate title from anything related to League PC, which kinda confirms that Riot really wants League Classic to stick around for a while. And to really prove that they are having fun here, the rest of the video was produced like a true League of Legends patch notes, which actually back in the day was called a dev diary. And so of course, it was recorded on a 4080p camera. Even funnier, they confirmed they recorded this on a 3DS. And of course, they had their original Rider hoodies and shirts. It's glorious. At the same time, I also appreciate the nostalgic journey these two brought us, because they started talking about the 1% crit rune, as well as surrender at 20. The website, not the game mechanic. Even funnier, they brought back Morello, after whom Morello Nomicon is called. Needless to say, yes, I don't think he works at Riot. But of course he is here because he is the one who did the original dev diaries. Anyway, after a quick reintroduction of what we can expect from Classic, which includes AP Master Yi as well as AP Scion, we get all the important information. So League Classic is not gonna be focusing on one specific patch. Of course, we learned about this last time during the MSI game. And so here it was confirmed that once again, the baseline is gonna be Season 3, with the rest being added in to make it feel like the greatest hits of the early seasons. With the catch being that anything that gets added in has to be from the early seasons. And on Reddit, Meddler confirmed that they do have a sort of a cutoff at the year 2013, with Yasuo being the point of no return. So anything that arrived before Yasuo can happen in Classic, which funnily enough could include someone like Aatrox. And yes, I do believe that Yasuo is the right cutoff, because Yasuo does not feel like Classic at all. Not that the situation can be saved. Now, while the idea of the greatest hits is already not exactly the Classic vibe, I do believe Riot actually went the best direction they could. Because especially in the first 3 seasons, surprisingly, they are all very different from each other. For example, the masteries between Season 1 and Season 2 were completely different. Later, trinkets became a thing. And Heart of Gold wasn't even a thing by the time Season 3 arrived. So the greatest nostalgic moments that people remember actually come from across multiple seasons. That is why Riot can't just lock in on one of them, you would be missing out on cool stuff. So I do believe them trying to tie it all together is actually the right call. But again, it is not exactly giving us the pure classic experience. And so next they talk about champion releases. Now here they confirmed that they are releasing the original 40 champions as well as 20 hand-picked ones, which means that the champions will not be released in a chronological order. Instead, they shoved in the first ones, and then they likely made whoever was actually easier to port with their old kits. Because remember, in order for the old kits to work, you have to recreate them with the modern framework. Because League Classic is not a separate game technically, it still runs on the modern engine. And besides the champions we've already seen, it was confirmed that someone like Poppy, Akali and Irelia are also coming in later. Now interestingly enough, here they also mentioned what they believe is one of the cores of what makes Classic feel like Classic, at least when it comes to the abilities, with one of them being good old point and click abilities. With Modern League having mostly skill shots, and you know why that is? It's because skill shots make for a great esports experience. Yes, that is actually why all the point and click abilities were removed. It's because it is skill expression. But here they really don't want to do that. In fact, if we go to the blog, which explains more about this, they mentioned something interesting. Our main goal for Classic is to be a place for you to have fun with your friends, rather than a sweaty ranked grindfest. So yes, Riot wants to keep Classic more about the casual fun and stupid builds, which is very much the Classic fun I remember. Also next they mentioned that dashes are not really Classic. And I think we can all agree. Next they also mentioned that because we are getting a bunch of champion versions as well as items from different versions of League, even though some people may think that old League has already been solved years ago, the truth is that now there will be champion and item combinations that never existed before. For example, the spell Promote was removed and turned into the Banner of Command, but now Banner of Command and Promote are in the game at the same time, which means you can double buff a minion. They also mentioned that there will be multiple versions of jungling items. I wonder if that's gonna actually break some of the junglers, because you can buy them at the same time on the same jungler. And again, while this sounds interesting and it will give the old players some new tools to try, once again, some of these changes are on a slightly wilder side. Although so far everything is still within the Classic boundary. After which they also dive into the runes and masteries. And again, we do have some changes here. But thankfully, these changes are appreciated. Because the base structure of these systems is the same, meaning the gameplay is exactly the same. You'll make a page, you'll drop the runes there, and you'll spend your points on masteries, just like before. However, you will be able to unlock all of these without the hard grind. For context, no matter what level you are, you will always start at least with the base filled rune page. This was not the case before, meaning that in old League, if a level 1 account fought level 30, you were at a massive disadvantage, because you were missing like 20% of your stats. But here, even at level 1, everyone will have the base stats, so in the worst case, you will not be as optimal as your opponent. And by the time you are about level 4, you should have all of your masteries unlocked as well. Also, some of you may remember that back in the day there were 3 tiers of runes. And depending on what level you are, you were only allowed to use the lowest tier, and then you had to upgrade it. But now, all runes will be tier 3, thank God. And so while the old runes and masteries are there in the way you remember, the bad part, which is the grind that would have prevented players from even trying Classic, is not there. And that, I do believe, is actually a good change. With that said, there are also some changes to the gameplay, because some of the runes that were never used were actually slightly buffed, so now people can actually see if they can use it. And following up on that, they actually gave us a list of changes that should be beneficial for the game, while also keeping the game feeling classic. And so here we got the obvious ones like better performance and better server structure, better matchmaking. But there are also some changes which might actually change the feeling. First of all, they mentioned better UX design. Now here I am gonna assume they are only talking about the way you interact with the systems. Meaning that again, the runes and masteries are there with the same looking buttons and everything like that. But now it will be way simpler to get into the part where you just do your runes. And it should all keep the old UI. Next, they also mention spell buffering. This is actually something that plays off of the old server infrastructure. Because back in the day, the servers stick at specific intervals, meaning that abilities could batch together. So if two champions cast a spell in the same window, which back in the day happened to be a few milliseconds, both abilities would go off, both would trigger at the same time, and so it's possible both champions would kill each other in the same frame. Now a better example would be something like casting point and click on Ezreal after he already jumped away. Because instant spells, for example Ryze's W, could trigger on the exact same frame where Ezreal already jumped away, meaning that you imprison him while he's gone. Now of course the same thing happens in Modern League as well. But it is far more difficult to pull it off there because the servers are a lot faster. Back in the day, this was almost an intended mechanic. And so perhaps Riot should actually try and fake the old spell batching. But then we got 3 massive changes that followed that. But again, I do understand why these exist. First of all, there are modern pings. Yes, these will be in Classic. And sure, I understand what's going on. Technically, this is just accessibility. It doesn't actually just change the gameplay, even though yes, old League was all about communicating in the chat. But that also meant that the toxicity was a lot higher. So pings kind of fix that issue as well as make people more introverted better. And on the topic of accessibility, there is also WASD. Yes, WASD is an even more modern mechanic that somehow made it into Classic. But again, I remember it is accessibility and technically the gameplay is the same, you're just changing the controller. So even this is still fine. Just like how I'm fine with the third change. The role picking, which they didn't actually dive into in the video. It is in the dev blog that they confirm that, yup, the new champion select will be there. Meaning that you will pick your role and the game will shove you into a game where your role is already chosen. Back in the day, everyone raced to type mid or feed first. And I'll be honest, if you actually want the old champion select back, the one where people wrestled over what they wanted to play, I don't think you are actually the targeted audience for Classic. Because nobody wants the old champion select back, because there is no point to that one. It artificially increases toxicity, and that is it. Now, what is cool is that in Classic, the system will be a little bit more aggressive with choosing your secondary or the third option. Because partially, they need healthy queues for Classic, but also, it kind of mimics people stealing your role. And so far with these changes, it's all still fine, although we are right at the edge of what people actually wanted to see. But that's where they saved the situation a bit by talking about the balance, where they confirm that they will have regular balance patches, but they are not balancing the game around ranks or competitive environment. As far as we know, there won't even be ranked at launch, if there even will be one later. No, instead, they are balancing the game to have the stupid fun we remember. As an example, Twisted Fate's ultimate will actually stay as his W, just like how it was back in the day. And they will keep it this way until the moment they realize they can't actually properly balance it. So the fun is still their priority. And when it comes to other changes coming to Classic, they confirmed that they are doing a voting which they call the Council. Now, yes, this community voting seems to be exactly the same thing as what old school RuneScape does. And there it works very well. Now, since they called it the Council, I would like to use my vote and tell them that they should be renaming this to the Tribunal. Why did nobody think about it? And it was confirmed that the voting will be similar to their previous VGU votes. However, the votes will be weighted. Meaning, depending on what is your Classic League account level and how many seasons you engaged with previously, your vote will have more worth. And because it is all tied to right accounts, you can't really bot the votes. Now, when it comes to Classic specifically, this is all the info we got from the video. But the blog talked about one more change, and that change broke me. So let's talk about the cosmetic side. First, it was confirmed that Classic League will have its own free pass. This I am completely fine with because it replaces the old leveling system. And through this, you will be able to unlock stuff like the rustier Blitzcrank skin. Now, outside of this, there will be also seasonal passes that will be both free and paid. Now, first of all, they confirmed that there will be multiple passes, meaning that we are gonna be going through multiple seasons with Classic. And the tracks should work just like how modern battle passes work. Although, on PBE, we've already seen that there are some changes. And so actually, League Classic is gonna be using the Marvel Rivals kind of a pass. Meaning you unlock tiers and then you spend currency in those tiers. I've never played Marvel Rivals, so I'm gonna assume it works. Which is where we get into the thing that I don't like. The way they handle Classic skins. And please, I hope my future self who already played PBE is gonna interrupt me, because what they wrote here is sad. But essentially, the blog explains that Classic skins, which is what the champions looked like back in the day, as well as all the classic skins which you may remember from back in the day, will be unlocked through tokens which you get for free, and it is up to you what you wanna unlock with it. Now this stinks. Because if you think about it, you know what this means? It means that this is not the Evelyn that you get to see in the game. No, someone has to use their token on this to make this appear in the game. No, by default, all champions are the modern VGU versions. This is a skin you have to unlock. Now, it is not paid, right? It's not making us pay for this, it is free. Well, actually, future Necrit here, it turns out, while the tokens are earnable for free, you can also buy one token for $5. Take it away, past Necrit. But this is not what people wanted to see. Why are you advertising classic appearances of all champions everywhere when you hop into the game and it's nothing but VGUs? I don't like this. One bit. What? No, literally everyone in the game, literally everyone in this queue is a new VGU version of the old champion. There is not a single champion in this game that is classic right now. You can't make League Classic feel like Classic with all the modern forms running everywhere, while giving people the option to make them look old. I mean, can you imagine if Classic WoW launched and it was actually the modern models everywhere running in the old world? I mean, the moment you are playing old League with the old map and you bring in 2026 Evelyn, what's the point? If you actually want to give us modern game with just old kits, that is actually not what people wanted to see. This is not Classic! Yes, the gameplay is the main reason why Classic feels like Classic, but the visual side is an equal component. Now, what's crazy is that I understand why this is happening. They need to make modern skins available in the game, because all the people who already paid for the skins in the modern game should be able to use their money in all game modes. Ignoring the fact that Swarm existed and no one cared about skins not being there. So when you make Classic, you have to give people the option to use the skins they already bought. It makes sense. Also, it actually makes sense why the modern version of the skins are available while the old ones are not. and why there is only a limited amount of the classic skins that are available for the tokens. It's because technically they are not in the game. Because League Classic is not a separate game and it is actually just a game mode for the modern game, all the modern champions and the modern skins are in the files. But if you wanna port in an old skin, you actually have to do that. You have to port it over. Meaning someone has to spend time on making the old version of the champions and their skins work in the game. In other words, the modern skins are already there, so why don't we use them? Which means it is technically not possible to use the old skins without a lot of work going into it. And I mean, we are talking about a lot of work here. But what's crazy is that there is the simplest fix imaginable for this. The only thing Riot needs to do is to make the old look the base form of the champion. That is all we are asking for. After which you let people buy the modern VGU with the tokens if they really want it. I mean, the modern skins are already a side grade to the old model, so just treat the new VGU the same way. Not to mention that the classic skins are free anyway, they come from the tokens. With the audience that actually wants to play classic, wanting to see the old models, not the VGUs. So why do you release a game where the VGU is the base and all the players who want to see the old ones have to grind for something that is free anyway and you have to force them into using a token on it? It should legitimately work the other way. Please, Riot, this is important to me. This is why the voting exists, right? I vote to invert this. Also, why is my future self who played PBE not interrupting me? That's because all of this is true. And the blog explains more of it. As for other skins you've accumulated, many will be available to use in Classic at launch. We've tried to have as many skins ready for launch as possible, but for those who aren't ready, we'll be expanding this list over time. But you'll be able to use every base model champion, which will also have received all the old school inking outlines. Some champions have also gotten VFX, animation and sound updates to match their classic kits if they've received VGU since the time period, like Sion for example. So yes, do you remember classic Sion that is shown everywhere? Well, actually, that's not what he's gonna look like when you play the game. I can't believe this. Besides this, there is actually one cool thing. Portraits. It is a new kind of cosmetic they are trying for Classic, and it is safe to assume it will end up in Modern League one day. Essentially, you can unlock different portraits for your loading screen. And here they are specifically using all the placeholder art they used to use back in the day for first League of Legends champions. And that is it. Back in the dev update they talk about ARAM Mayhem also getting a classic-ish version, which is a new ARAM Mayhem with a separate queue that will use the old League of Legends champions. This one will have a classic map, new augments and old kits. They also talk about the partner program reopening in September.
Reply to the video with your favorite creators you'd love to see in the LPP.
He called it LPP, it is actually called the RPP now. Hall of Legends will be revealed in the next few weeks. And that is it. There is no clever outro. I'm actually sad about how Classic looks. My day is ruined. Goodbye.